Good, excellent. Hello. My name is Floyd Mueller. Betty Sargeant and myself, we are from the Exertion Games Lab at RMIT University in Melbourne, Australia. We represent the lab, so we thought we wear a lab coat. And we're presenting How Far Is Up. And Betty apologizes deeply that she can't be here. So she's going to talk to you in a video about how we started off with the Counterpointed Triad Technique, brought that basically to the 21st century, and used a case study of a digital storybook app for kids to exemplify that. But let me start off with stating that we in the Exertion Games Lab, we work with the assumption that we used to play with digital content to now, thanks to sensor advances, play with the digital using our bodies. But what we rather want is experiencing our bodies as play. And so in this talk, we're going to give you like one strategy towards achieving that by focusing on multiple bodies that if they engage with the same digital media. We have all experienced times when presenters read the text that appears on the screen and the audience falls asleep. You know, if you've all seen this, you all know that you shouldn't do that. But we were still very surprised that actually if you look at the Apple App Store, in particular if you look at storybook apps for kids, this happens all the time, right? This is redundant information and is not appreciated by audiences. You might say, hang on, but if it's for kids, right, there is a reason for that. Because if you have an app for kids and the kid can't read yet, so it's a pre-literate kid, you might want to be able to show these two informations, text and audio, because he or she can't read the text, so the kid needs the audio. The problem here is now that if an adult comes in and wants to join the shared media experience, there's no real role for the adult, right? Because the narrator already reads the text. Then you might say, all right, then I'm creating a little toggle button that turns the audio on or off. That would be nice, but now studies had shown that actually if you give a kid the option of turning the audio on or off, they actually prefer not having their parent read out the text, but the professional narrator. He's a professional, right? It makes a lot of sense. The kids realize that. So the question here is now, how do we design experiences for these sometimes single user experience and sometimes multiple user experiences over a shared digital content? And Betty took up this challenge and she designed this app, How Far Is Up? Runs on an iPad. You're more than welcome to come and try it out afterwards. It's a beautifully designed, fully functional app that aims to support children to read it on their own, but in the same way is engaging when an adult wants to join, if an adult wants to join and engage in that shared reading experience. So, as I said, Betty is going to talk in the video about the Counterpointed Triad Technique, which is an established technique, pre-digital, that we now brought into the digital domain, which basically argues to counterpoint things rather than make them redundant. And then she talks about how we implemented that in the app's design. Then we talk about our study where we took the app into a kindergarten where children were able to read it on their own and together with an adult. And I conclude then with a couple of design strategies that should help you if you are interested in anything that really combines text, visuals, and audio for more than one person. So that can easily apply. We only did storybook apps, but it can easily apply, we think, also for any kind of websites, games, AR, VR, anything where you combine multiple text, video, audio for more than one person.
Hi, I'm Betty Sargeant and I wrote, illustrated and programmed the How Far Is Up app. I also made all of the handcrafted elements in the work. How Far Is Up is a storybook app for audiences aged 3 to 5. The story combines a fictional narrative with factual NASA data. It features a 5-year-old who's curious about how far he can travel into space, and he embarks on a voyage to the outer reaches of the universe, accompanied by a dog and a mouse. Finding themselves in peril, the shy dog leads the trio safely home to Earth. The app begins on the Earth's surface, and the action moves progressively away from this starting point as the narrative unfolds. I was particularly interested in making an app that children and adults could read together, because research shows that children don't like reading apps beside an adult because an adult tends to get in the way of their reading experience. So in order to get some guidance here, I turned to picture book theory, because picture books have a long history of adults and children reading them side by side in shared reading experiences. Literary theorists Maria Nikolaieva and Carol Scott specialise in studying picture books. They found that some picture books contain the same story content in the text and the visuals. They call this symmetrical design. Here we have a red apple and the text saying, "This is a red apple." This is symmetrical design. Readers aren't engaged in uncovering narrative content, they remain passive. When you apply this idea to storybook apps, symmetry is most commonly seen in the way that an audio narrator reads the text that appears on the screen.
The book led him to an extraordinary building where many books apparently nested.
Research shows that when children see this kind of symmetrical content, they tend to look at the visuals, listen to the audio, and disregard the text. The text becomes redundant. Nikolaieva and Scott found that some picture books display text and visuals that tell different parts of a story, and they called this counterpointed design. Counterpointed design is where the focus is on emphasis by contrast. Here we have an image of a red apple, and the text says, "Ruby was an apple. She loved being green." This may be the beginning of an identity story, and the counterpointed design sparks readers' imaginations. They become active. They have some kind of narrative puzzle to solve. We took this idea of counterpoint and adapted it for the digital realm. We created the Counterpointed Triad Technique. The visuals, the audio, and the text, they each present separate narrative messages, and together they tell a story.
Up the tallest tree branch.
The audio narrator in this scene states, "Up the tallest tree branch." If children try to match the audio information with the visuals, they may see one character in the house, another swinging from the tree, and a tiny yellow character sitting on the very top of the tree, on the tallest tree branch. Readers are rewarded for engaging with the counterpointed content. They're provided with narrative detail relating to how far the characters are off the ground. One key aspect of our app's counterpointed design is that the narrator doesn't read the written text. This means that a pre-literate child will need to have the text read aloud to them.
Past outer galaxies.
The written text also appears after the audio narration has finished. This may suggest to readers that the written text contains different information to that in the narration. We aimed to maintain a minimal level of animation throughout the app, as too much animated movement can visually overload young children. This video shows a row of identical photographs of planet Earth with corresponding numbers. The visuals operate as an invitation for children to engage in a counting activity. The animated imagery shows the progressive appearance of planets with corresponding numbers. Children can read the numbers and count each planet as it appears on the screen. The design draws on the alluring qualities of animation with the aim of directing children's attention to a simple counting task. The accompanying written text further describes the visuals. This text invites the children and the adults to imagine the distance between Earth and its moon. When engaged in shared reading, we anticipate that adults will assist children in further understanding the concepts presented here. Lastly, we underlined the counterpointed content by drawing from both digital and non-digital materials. The curtain at the beginning of the app is designed to replicate conventions used in live theatre. The typography is handcrafted, the musical recording features acoustic piano and subtle bird sounds. We deliberately offer a combination of audio-visual textual material that references cultural actions and nature. These cultural and geographic references are presented in counterpoint to a fictional story. We wanted to know how children would engage with the How Far Is Up app. So we recruited 26 children from a kindergarten, and they read the app alone and read it alongside an adult in a shared reading situation. 24 of 26 children were observed as being actively engaged when reading the app alone. By actively engaged, we mean that the children carefully watched the animated sequences, they triggered interactive elements, and verbally commented on the story content. 25 of the 26 children were observed as being actively engaged during the shared reading sessions. These children discussed with the adult the action shown in the animated sequences. They triggered interactive elements and talked about personal experiences that related to the story. Therefore, the majority of the children appeared to be engaged in the storybook during both independent and shared reading sessions. During their independent reading, 17 children engaged in the counting activity. 3 of them returned to this activity, completing the task 2 or 3 times. During the shared session, 25 children engaged in this activity. These children watched the animation, counted out loud, asked questions about the space objects and the meaning of the written text. The counting task provided the children with not only animated features, but with opportunities to interact with the adult and with the app's content. The interactive activities allowed the children to relate to the content in individualised ways. For example, 3 children wrote their names in the light blue particle images shown here. I'll now pass you back to Floyd, who will outline some of our strategies for designing counterpointed storybook apps.
So yeah, I just want to highlight, in the paper we present a full set of design strategies that we believe can be important for you as designer if you're interested in supporting anything with video, text and visuals for more than one person. I'm not going to go into detail for each one of them. I'm just going to highlight that the first one is about the animation, that you saw in the video already. The next one is about the reading momentum. Then we've got self-expression and style. I briefly then talk about the timing as a design strategy. So that's the only one I cover here, where we encourage you to use the counterpointed technique to contrast the content of the text and the audio, because that invites parents to read the text out loud for the child. In particular, we want to highlight that it might be useful to actually play the audio just before and then the text, because we found that very engaging for both independent and shared reading. But of course, further studies can determine more details about the timing. To conclude, I just want to summarize the potential of the Counterpointed Triad Technique for you as designer, because we believe it's a very powerful tool for creating digital media content. We've shown you that with our example of How Far Is Up, the iPad app that I showed you, where we basically bring the Counterpointed Triad Technique from traditional books into the 21st century, and in particular digital storybook apps, but as I said, I think it equally applies for other things such as games. Betty and I are from the Exertion Games Lab at RMIT in Melbourne, Australia, and that concludes my talk. Thank you very much.
I was wondering if you could talk about evaluation of the counterpointed triad technique versus the technique that is used right now. How would you evaluate such work?
How would I evaluate which work? Sorry?
The counterpointed triad
Yeah.
technique, the technique that you're proposing for the storybook, what would be the best way to evaluate such work in field, in kindergarten or home settings?
All right, so yeah, thank you. We thought about it, whether we do a classic approach where we have a bunch of designers and give them not the counterpointed triad technique and just let them do what they want to do with a given task, and then give the same task to other designers that were introduced to the counterpointed technique. That's a traditional way of evaluating an effectiveness of one tool, but then, what's the other tool? What's the thing that they have learned, and what have they learned? Different things. That would be the classic, but maybe a bit of boring way of evaluating it. But there's certainly other ways of learning from new techniques by analyzing its effectiveness in the design. And by effectiveness, you can use quantitative analysis for that or qualitative, and we just usually prefer qualitative for these kind of very visceral experience that result out of that.
Thank you. Looks very exciting. I would now like to invite the next speaker on stage, Powell from KTH, Royal Institute of Technology.